calmly. Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we are talking about Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. The Goblet of Fire is a very interesting one because besides maybe like Deathly Hallows, this is really the most different one. I mean, obviously with Deathly Hallows, they're not in Hogwarts at all, but this one, they are in Hogwarts, but it is not a regular year because of the Triwizard Tournament. The Goblet of Fire was directed by Mike Newell, and I will say he is my least favorite of the directors of Harry Potter, although he still did a really good job. The thing about Mike is that he really wanted to make this a very British movie. Like, he wanted to make Hogwarts feel like it's a very British school. And he does a really good job of that, but he also doesn't exactly have his own signature look or thing about this movie that you can be like, that's Mike Newell. It just feels like kind of a standard Harry Potter movie, not like Alfonso Cuarón, which you'd be like, okay, yeah, that was definitely Alfonso Cuarón. He has his own look to that. I will say, listening to some of the stories about Mike Newell on set, he really did go very into his directing. There is a story about how when he was directing Fred and George, James and Oliver Phelps, on how to fight, he actually was like, no, it's got to be like this. You got to really get into it. And he went and started wrestling with one of the twins and ended up hurting his back. So I will say that is dedication. But overall, he doesn't have as much of like a thing, except for the fact that maybe this one has such a huge scope and he was able to fulfill that. We also had a new crew member, Patrick Doyle, who took over for John Williams as the composer. He also has a very worldly feel about some of the scores, especially considering we have the people from other countries and other schools coming into Hogwarts. It was very fitting to have that kind of worldly foreign feel. And kind of the same with Mike Newell is that the biggest thing about Patrick Doyle's composing is that it was very big and it has a huge scope. And that is such a cool part about this movie. Its scope, it's incredible. Between the dragon flight, the underwater task, the maze, the graveyard scene, the Quidditch World Cup, all of it is just huge. There's so much more of this Harry Potter world expanded. I remember very little bits and pieces of actually seeing Goblet of Fire for the first time. I just know that when I went home that day, I was acting out so many of the scenes like in my living room. This is the first one where not just the whole movie was cool, but like I was thinking of little specific parts and moments that were just so cool, like the dragonflight or the duel between Harry and Voldemort. I mean, it was just so cool. One of my other favorite moments of this movie is that one shot where Voldemort is luring Harry out to try to duel with him, and Harry just has this moment where he turns from scared to just pissed. He's like, I'm done, I'm doing this. That for me is the shot where he grows up. That for me is the shot where he turns from a kid into an adult, and this has just become so much more mature. This has become so much darker. This movie is so much darker. It starts off with like a picture of a skull. I mean, for a kid's movie, that's pretty scary. And so this one really takes it to a whole new level of dark and a whole new level of maturity for Harry. And even with all that cinematic grandeur, they still put so much detail into some of these scenes. They actually, for the Quidditch World Cup, made up pamphlets that, like, you can go through the whole thing and see all these fonts and details and patterns just in case you might see one on screen. But the best part about this movie is just how fun it is. I mean, you get to see the fun parts of the school, which is, just a lot of games and tasks, and we have guests coming in this one from all over the world, and dances. I mean, that's such a big part of school, and it's cool that they have that in this with the Yule Ball. But man, those kids really went hard. I really thought they were about to, like, start doing body shots of, like, fire whiskey or something. And of course, the tasks are just incredibly cool. I mean, every single one of them. I will say, the fact that they took the first task with the dragon and had him break out of the chains. Very cinematic and cool. What's the procedure on this? Now you just have a dragon flying around the castle and could go anywhere and eat somebody, and they all just sit in the stands like, wonder when it's coming back. Which brings up another point. It would suck to be an audience member watching the 3 tasks, because let's be honest, this is how it would go. All right, I'm ready for this first task. There's gonna be a lot of dragons. All right, here comes Harry. Okay, he's fighting the dragon, and there it goes. All right, you know what? We still have 2 more tasks. Okay, there they go. They're about to go into the water, and there they go. When are they coming back? That kind of sucked, but we still have 1 more task. All right, they're about to go into the maze. There they go. This really sucks. Oh, they're back. Okay, something's happening. Something's happening. Is it me, or does that guy look like really still? Like he's not moving. Here's the only problem with the scope and incredible cinematics of this movie, is that while they're focused on all of the shots and the look, a lot of the characters and themes have to be sacrificed. And this is a very big discussion, because it gets into, now with these books getting so much bigger, what do we do? They actually had debated making Goblet of Fire into 2 movies. And they decided, Mike Newell actually decided that he wanted to do one because he saw it as a very Hitchcock thriller, that was kind of one big mystery and you had to have it be a one tight story, which I respect. I can't imagine being Steve Kloves having to try and condense a 700-page children's story into 2.5 hours of a movie for a mainstream audience. That shouldn't even be a sentence. I don't envy him as a writer, because that is a huge task. Because no matter what you do, people are going to bitch. Either you make one movie, but you can't put everything in, or it's going to be like 4 hours long, or you make 2 movies and you can put everything in, but then people are like, oh, this messes up the pacing of the series. It's so weird. Why would they make, oh, it's such a money grab. There's no winning, so I can really recognize that it's a very hard thing to do. That being said, it is a little disappointing when 5 minutes in, you're already at the Quidditch World Cup, and then they're like, all right, well, at least we're going to see the Quidditch World Cup, right? No. We don't get to see that. We don't get to see Spew, which, if you haven't read the books, is the Society for the Promotion of Elfish Welfare. We don't even get to see Dobby in the books. There's so much that they had to take out. So it really feels like they did one movie, but it was almost the bare bones of it, like just the big main parts, with only having a little bit here and there of character moments or moments that push themes or subplots, like Ron and the struggle that he has with feeling like he's nothing because he's poor, and compared to Harry, he's nothing. And that comes here and there, obviously, when he's angry, but there is one little moment on the train when Harry says, oh, I'll get that for you, because I have money. And Ron's like, no, it's fine, I'll just get the one. And it's one of those things where I feel like they had to put it in just to be like, see, we put it in there. But it's weird, because then you just feels like they're throwing in subplots just because they have a little bit of room for it. Now, this kind of brings up a little bit of a topic that I want to talk about in another video, is should Harry Potter be made into a TV show? Because we want to see the cinematics, we want to see it visually, but it's hard to do that in a movie, because books and movies are 2 different media. Yes, they go closely together in terms of story, but the way that you present it, you can have a 700-page book. You can't have a 700-minute movie. I mean, you could, but no one's going to watch it. I'll watch it, but that's besides the point. With a TV show, you have a lot more room. That's something I'll talk about in another video, but it's something to think about. So in talking about character, there are a few characters that I really want to highlight in this one based on how they're portrayed or just the fact that they're introduced. The first one is Alastor Moody, played wonderfully by Brendan Gleeson. I mean, he really had that, grit down, and, he's seen a lot of shit. The only problem I had is that I really noticed watching it again, towards the end, they really don't try to hide the fact that, Moody is either not who he says he is, or he's hiding something, or he's, evil. In the books, it's not as exposed that much, But again, it is one movie. You have to kind of push it along and have it not be like an ex machina at the end. And it's like, whoa, I didn't even see that coming. But otherwise, I mean, he was very funny. I mean, the remote controlled eye was just so cool to watch. For Ron and Hermione, I did feel like they had a little bit more to do in this one than in Prisoner of Azkaban, which I was very happy about. They do feel a little, I don't want to say sidelined, but not as important in this one just because there's so much else going on. I know I talked about Ron not having as much of a character in the last one, and this one he still has a lot of that, being the funny guy, being the one who complains a lot, but I think he does have more depth in this one in terms of his being angry because he feels overshadowed, in terms of because he's jealous of Victor Crumb and Hermione. So they really, I think, gave him some more points on this one to actually have some depth. And same with Hermione, because while she's still, the bookish one, she has that moment where she comes out in the Yule ball dress, and it's just like a sort of changing moment. And that is one of my favorite moments of the whole movie, and of probably the whole series, because it really shows the friendship that Harry and Hermione have, because he sees her as like his little sister grown up. I know you've all been wondering where I stand on the Hermione shipping. I stand there. They're best friends. They're like brother and sister. He even says that in the book. Obviously, the other character that we have to talk about is Lord Voldemort. And Ralph Fiennes plays him so well. Now, I know a lot of people say that he overacts, but that's on purpose. He actually said in an interview that he was trying to figure out how to portray Voldemort, and he says, Voldemort is actually, he's a drama queen, let's be honest. And he does a lot of things that are very theatrical in terms of how he talks or how he acts towards people. And he said that was the only way I could think to play it. That's how I have to do it. I could deal without the end shot when he loses Harry and he's like, "Argh!" But other than that, I thought it was pretty good. He has that quietness, but that he's terrifying. He has that presence. Now, the last person I really want to highlight is Dumbledore. I mentioned at the beginning of the video one word that everybody in the fandom knows if you've read the books: calmly. Because if you haven't read the books, in the book, when Dumbledore asks Harry, "Did you put your name in the Goblet of Fire?" it very clearly says that he asks this calmly. In the movie, well,
protest! Harry, did you put your name in the Goblet of Fire?
This gets into a very big discussion for me, where if Michael Gambon is the better Dumbledore. I will actually talk more about him in the later movies, because I have my own thoughts on that, but for this one specifically, I get what they were going for. They were going for him being still a human, even if he's this very powerful wizard. He still has stress and anger, but they took that to the max, man. I mean, every scene he's in, he's just so aggressive and angry, and it's like somebody, like, peed in his pumpkin juice or something. I didn't get why we needed to take it that far.
Harry Potter! Every time I get close to an answer, it slips away. Is he in this room? Is he in this room? Silence!
Because, in the books, he does have that stress, but it doesn't come out all the time. And that's what makes it so impactful when it does, is that we only see it every so often where he actually breaks down and has a human moment, when he's not that all-powerful protective force that we think he is. I mean he is, but like he still can break down, and that's what makes it so emotional. But in this one, it's just every scene, and it gets tiring and unbecoming of Dumbledore. So overall, this is a very, very fun movie. It's very cool to watch, and it's very funny. It's got so many good moments. I mean, Fred and George have a lot of funny moments in this one, like asking Angelina Johnson to the ball. Obviously, the ferret scene with Draco, that's such a good scene. So there's so many really good moments that are fun and enjoyable, but it just doesn't feel like they quite hit it with, having to adapt this huge book into the movie. They put what they needed to, obviously, and it's still very tight, and if you've just only seen the movie, you're like, okay, yeah, I have no problem with that. But for the fans, I can understand, the frustration, and it's very hard because I can understand both sides as a writer and a screenwriter. So for accuracy to the source material, I'm gonna be lenient on that one and say a 3 out of 4. For tone, that's a little different just because while it did still have the magic, it is incredibly aggressive for most of the movie. There's just so much going on, and everybody's so angsty, and Dumbledore is like angry all the time. So the tone, it still has that very traditional and very Triwizard Tournament, medieval games kind of thing going on, which is really cool, like in the books, but they had to take out so many things, like Ludo Bagman and all of these characters and these little moments that I think could have tightened up that feeling of magic. And like we're still at Hogwarts and still in a Harry Potter movie, you know, like a regular year. I think that really could have filled in some of those bare moments that felt like we were just doing plot. I'm going to give that a 2.5 out of 4. But for cinematic quality, I definitely have to give that one a 3.5 out of 4 because while not every shot, I guess, has like meaning or whatever, like in Prisoner of Azkaban, Mike Newell from interviews with the cast really wanted to make every shot count and every shot the best it could be. And again, just the scope, the vastness of this movie in the big parts and some of the little parts was pretty well done. So overall, I'm going to give Goblet of Fire a 3 out of 4. So those are my thoughts on Goblet of Fire. Stick around for next week. We'll be doing Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. And as always, keep your hopes high, your stress low, and Harry Potter right in the middle.